Stop everything you're doing right now because the royal family of Atlanta just imploded in the most public way possible. We've seen the ups, the downs, and the family hustle. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared us for what just went down between Tiny Harris and T.I. Imagine the scene. A high-profile event, the cameras are rolling, the red carpet is glowing, and suddenly, the air turns ice-cold. Before anyone could blink, Tiny Harris, the woman who has stood by Clifford T.I. Harris through prison bids, scandals, and endless rumors, did the unthinkable. She didn't just raise her voice. She raised her hand. The slap heard round the world just landed, and the look on T.I.'s face said more than 1,000 lyrics ever could. But wait, if you think this is just a momentary lapse in judgment or a heated argument over a misinterpreted text, you are dead wrong. This isn't just about a slap. It's about the breaking point of a decade-long facade. Just as the dust was settling from the physical confrontation, Zenique Pullins, Tiny's eldest daughter, decided she was done playing the role of the silent witness. In a bombshell revelation that is currently melting down every server on the internet, Zenique has stepped out of the shadows to expose the truth her mother has been hiding. She didn't just hint at trouble. She dropped a timeline that has left fans absolutely breathless. We are talking about years of deception, hidden lives, and a secret dating timeline that traces back much further than any of us suspected. How long has T.I. really been leading this double life? What was the final straw that made the ever-loyal Tiny finally snap in front of the world? And most importantly, is this the official end of the Harris Empire? Stay tuned, because we are diving deep into the receipts, the witnesses, and the shocking confession from Zenique that changes everything we thought we knew about T.I. and Tiny. The atmosphere in that room didn't just change. It shattered into a million pieces the second Tiny's hand made contact with T.I.'s face. You could have heard a pin drop, if not for the collective gasp of every person standing in that VIP section. For years, we've seen T.I. and Tiny as the ultimate power couple of Atlanta. The king and queen who weathered every storm, from legal battles to public scandals that would have broken any other union. But this was different. This wasn't a choreographed moment for a reality show or a strategic leak to keep their names in the headlines. This was raw, unfiltered, and deeply personal rage boiling over in the most public way imaginable. Witnesses say the tension had been building all night, a cold war of whispers and side-eye that finally erupted when T.I. leaned in to say something that clearly crossed a line Tiny was no longer willing to respect. As the sound of the slap echoed, the security detail scrambled, not knowing whether to intervene or give the couple space to implode. T.I., usually so quick with a rebuttal and so sharp with his vocabulary, stood frozen. His signature smirk was gone, replaced by a look of genuine shock that someone, especially the woman who has been his backbone, had finally reached her limit. The rumors started flying instantly. Was it another woman? Was it a disrespect toward her children? Or was it the weight of 1,000 small betrayals finally crushing the spirit of the woman the world knows as Tiny? The cameras that are usually welcomed by this family were suddenly the enemy, as associates tried to block the view of a crumbling empire. But you can't hide energy like that. The vibration of that confrontation felt like the end of an era, and as Tiny stormed out, followed by a trail of whispers, the real story was only just beginning to leak through the cracks. While the internet was busy trying to verify the grainy footage of the physical altercation, the real earthquake was being prepared by someone inside the inner circle. Zenique Pullins has always been the calmest voice in the Harris household. She's the one who often stays out of the fray, focusing on her own life and career while the drama swirls around her parents. But something about this night changed her. Perhaps it was seeing her mother pushed to a point of physical aggression. Or perhaps it was a secret she had been carrying for far too long that simply became too heavy to hold. As the news of the slap broke the internet, Zenique didn't go into damage control mode. She didn't post a cryptic quote about family loyalty or try to downplay the incident. Instead, she chose to speak a truth that many had suspected but no one had the guts to confirm. The revelation began not with a formal statement, but with a series of reactions that hinted at a much deeper rot within the family dynamic. Friends of the family claim that Zenique had been witnessing a double life for much longer than the public realizes. The narrative we've been fed, the one where T.I. is the devoted, if slightly flawed, patriarch, started to dissolve under the heat of Zenique's quiet but firm stance. People close to the situation say that Zenique's decision to finally speak up wasn't out of malice, but out of a desperate need to protect her mother from a cycle that seemed never-ending. The question on everyone's lips wasn't just why Tiny slapped him, but what could have possibly been said or done to make her snap so violently after years of silence. The answer, according to those watching Zenique's moves, lies in a timeline of betrayal that stretches back through the years, involving people and places that the public was never supposed to know about. As the night turned into early morning, the digital landscape was a war zone of theories. Some fans were quick to defend T.I., citing his leadership in the community and his long history with Tiny, while others were firmly in Tiny's corner, tired of seeing her endure what appeared to be constant disrespect. But the focus shifted dramatically when Zenique's circle began to let the real details slide. We aren't just talking about a recent fling or a momentary lapse in judgment. The whispers coming out of the Harris camp suggest that Zenique has proof of a relationship T.I. has been maintaining right under their noses. A relationship that hasn't just lasted weeks or months, but has been a consistent shadow over their family life for an astonishingly long time. The betrayal wasn't just about another woman. It was about the time, the energy, and the resources being funneled away from the home and into a secondary life that T.I. thought he had successfully hidden. The slap was the catalyst, but the revelation is the true explosion. Imagine being Tiny, knowing deep down that something is wrong but trying to maintain the image of the perfect, supportive wife for the sake of the brand, the kids, and the legacy. Then imagine your daughter, the person you trust most, confirming your worst fears with evidence that you can no longer ignore. This is the crossroads where the Harris family currently stands. The social media silence from T.I.'s camp is deafening. Usually, he's the first to post a long, intellectualized caption about growth and misunderstandings, but this time, the silence suggests that the slap was more than just a physical hit. It was a wake-up call that his carefully constructed world was about to be dismantled. Zenique's involvement adds a layer of credibility that a random blogger could never provide. When a child speaks out against a parent's behavior in such a public way, it carries a weight that is impossible to ignore. She isn't just an observer. She's a victim of the dysfunction that has been brewing behind the scenes of their reality show life. Those close to her say she is tired of the facade and tired of seeing her mother's loyalty being used as a weapon against her. The timeline she is preparing to reveal isn't just a list of dates. It's a roadmap of how a family can lose its way when the truth is sacrificed for the sake of appearances. As we wait for the full details of Zenique's revelation to hit the headlines, one thing is certain. The slap was just the tip of the iceberg, and the ice is starting to melt rapidly under the glare of public scrutiny. The fallout from this incident is spreading through Atlanta like wildfire. Prominent figures in the music industry and the reality TV world are taking sides. But the most interesting reaction is the one that hasn't happened yet. We are waiting for the receipts. We are waiting for the how long and the who that Zenique has teased. If the rumors are even half true, the duration of T.I.'s alleged side life is going to send shockwaves through the culture. It challenges the very idea of the ride-or-die mentality that Tiny has personified for so long. Is there a limit to loyalty? Is there a point where the slap is the only language left to speak? As the world watches this drama unfold, the tension is moving from the physical confrontation to a digital revelation that promises to be even more damaging. The stage is set for a showdown that will either redefine the Harris family or destroy it completely. And as part one of this saga concludes, the air is thick with the anticipation of a truth that can no longer be silenced. The silence from the Harris camp following the slap was eventually broken not by a publicist, but by the digital footprints that Zenique began to lay out, tracing a path that led straight to the heart of T.I.'s alleged double life. For the fans who have followed this family since the early days of the family hustle, the idea of T.I. being unfaithful isn't exactly new territory, but the scale of what Zenique started to hint at was on an entirely different level. We aren't just talking about a momentary lapse or a brief distraction while on tour. The timeline that began to emerge suggested a calculated, long-term commitment to a shadow relationship that has existed parallel to his marriage for years. According to sources close to Zenique, she had been piecing this puzzle together for a long time, watching her mother's heart break in slow motion while her father maintained a facade of the reformed family man. The revelation wasn't just about a name or a face. It was about the sheer duration of the deception, which reportedly stretches back much further than the most recent public scandals. As the details began to trickle out, the narrative shifted from a simple physical altercation to a deep-seated betrayal of trust that involved multiple layers of the Harris inner circle. Rumors suggest that Zenique discovered communication logs and travel records that painted a picture of a man living two completely different lives in two different cities. The shocking part isn't just that he was dating someone else, but that he had reportedly been doing so for a significant portion of the last decade, even during the times when he and Tiny were publicly celebrating their reconciliations and renewing their vows. Imagine the psychological toll on Tiny, standing on a stage or in front of a camera, professing her love for a man who, according to these new claims, was already mentally and emotionally invested in someone else. The slap in Atlanta wasn't just a reaction to a word spoken that night. It was the physical manifestation of years of suppressed knowledge finally reaching a boiling point. Zenique's decision to reveal how long this has been going on stems from a place of exhaustion. Those in her circle say she was tired of the ride-or-die culture being used to guilt her mother into staying in a situation that was clearly toxic. By bringing the timeline to light, Zenique effectively stripped away T.I.'s ability to claim these were just mistakes or growing pains in a long marriage. When a relationship lasts for years, it's no longer a mistake. It's a choice. And that choice, according to the emerging receipts, involved a woman who was more than just a passing fancy. There are whispers of a secret residence, of shared holidays, and of a level of intimacy that mirrors a second marriage. For Tiny, hearing these specifics from her own daughter, someone who has no reason to lie and every reason to want her mother's happiness, was the final nail in the coffin of her patience. The world saw the slap, but Zenique saw the years of quiet suffering that led up to it. The complexity of the situation is further deepened by the fact that T.I. has always positioned himself as a mentor and a leader, someone who values logic and discipline above all else. To have his daughter expose such a massive lapse in that very discipline is a blow to his public image that may be impossible to recover from. As Zenique began to share more context with those she trusts, the dates started to align with major family milestones. It's alleged that even during high-profile family events, T.I. was maintaining contact with this other woman, sometimes even using the cover of business trips or studio time to facilitate these meetings. This level of coordination requires a support system, and that is perhaps the most painful part of Zenique's revelation. The suggestion that people within their own camp may have known and helped hide the truth from Tiny for all these years. This isn't just a husband cheating. It's a systemic betrayal of a woman who has given everything to the Harris name. As the internet began to digest the possibility of a 10-year-long secret relationship, the backlash against T.I. intensified. Social media detectives started looking back at old photos and videos, finding clues that they had previously missed. The late-night posts, the cryptic captions from Tiny, and the awkward tension during certain episodes of their reality shows. Zenique's courage in stepping forward has opened a floodgate of information that T.I. can no longer control with a clever Instagram caption or a philosophical video. The power dynamic in the family has shifted. For years, Tiny was seen as the one who needed to hold it down, but Zenique's revelations suggest that Tiny was holding down a house built on sand. The dating timeline isn't just a list of scandals. It's a testament to Tiny's endurance and T.I.'s alleged capacity for deception. Every year that passes in this timeline represents another year Tiny spent believing in a loyalty that didn't exist in the way she thought it did. The impact on the Harris children is also a major part of this story. Zenique, being the eldest, has a perspective that the younger children might not yet fully grasp. Her decision to speak out is also a protective measure for her siblings, ensuring they don't grow up thinking that this level of dysfunction is normal or acceptable in a relationship. By exposing how long T.I. has allegedly been dating this other woman, Zenique is breaking a cycle of silence that has plagued high-profile celebrity families for generations. She is saying, no more. No more secrets, no more fake smiles for the cameras, and no more protecting a legacy that is rotting from the inside. The reaction from T.I.'s side has been one of stunned silence, likely because they are trying to figure out exactly how much Zenique knows and how many receipts she actually has in her possession. If she has what people say she has, the fallout will go far beyond a slap at a party. The atmosphere in Atlanta remains tense as everyone waits for the next move. Will Tiny file for divorce for the final time? Will T.I. attempt to explain away a decade of alleged infidelity? Or will Zenique release the full, unedited truth that she has been hinting at? The flow of information is steady, and it all points to a massive confrontation that has been years in the making. The slap was the spark, but the fuel was provided by the years of lies that Zenique is now systematically dismantling. As we move into the next phase of this drama, the focus is no longer on the physical hit, but on the emotional damage that has been uncovered. The Harris family, as we knew them, is gone. In their place is a group of individuals forced to confront a reality that is far more dramatic than any script a producer could ever write. The timeline is out there, the truth is emerging, and the King of the South is finding that his crown doesn't protect him from the consequences of his own choices. The digital dust hadn't even begun to settle from Zenique's bombshell timeline when the world's attention shifted back to the woman at the center of the storm, Tiny Harris. For years, the public has viewed Tiny through a lens of extreme patience, a woman who defined the term ride or die to its very limit. But something about this specific revelation, backed by her own daughter's testimony, felt final. The slap in Atlanta was the physical breaking point, but the emotional divorce had clearly been happening in silence for months, if not years. Insiders suggest that Tiny had reached a stage of numbness, where the pain of T.I.'s alleged double life no longer hurt. It simply motivated her to seek a different kind of freedom. The narrative of the loyal wife waiting at home while the King of the South handled his business was officially dead. Tiny wasn't just reacting to a rumor anymore. She was reacting to a decade of her life that felt like it had been lived under a shadow of a lie that she was finally strong enough to step out of. As news of Zenique's revelation spread, Tiny's social media became a focal point for millions. While she didn't immediately release a lengthy statement or a tearful video, her actions spoke louder than any paragraph could. Sources close to the singer and entrepreneur say that she began the process of separating her life, not just emotionally, but legally and financially, from the Harris empire. The dating timeline that Zenique exposed acted as a map for Tiny to realize exactly where the cracks had started. It wasn't just about one woman. It was about the realization that her husband's energy, which she thought was being poured into their family and their various businesses, was being diverted elsewhere for years. The betrayal wasn't just romantic. It was a betrayal of the partnership they had built since they were both young stars in Atlanta. The slap was the world's first hint, but Tiny's subsequent silence was the true indicator that the family hustle was over for good. The reaction from T.I.'s camp remained surprisingly muted, a stark contrast to his usual loquacious and philosophical defense mechanisms. Usually, when faced with scandal, the rapper is known for using complex vocabulary and long-form videos to explain his perspective or educate his audience on the nuances of relationships. But how do you intellectualize a 10-year double life exposed by your own flesh and blood? You don't. You wait for the storm to pass, but this time the storm was stationary. The loyalty that T.I. had counted on from Tiny for decades had finally evaporated, replaced by a fierce protectiveness over her own peace and her children's future. Industry insiders claim that behind closed doors, the atmosphere was even more volatile, with T.I. reportedly trying to navigate the fallout not just with Tiny, but with his business partners and the community that looks up to him as a leader. The crown was slipping, and for the first time he didn't have Tiny there to help him straighten it. Zenique's role in this final act cannot be overstated. By revealing the how long, she effectively took the power out of T.I.'s hands. She didn't just tell her mother's story. She told her own story of growing up in a household where the truth was often a moving target. The support she received from the public was overwhelming, with many praising her for choosing her mother's mental health over the preservation of a fake family image. This shift in the family dynamic, where the children are now the ones setting the boundaries, is a testament to a new era in celebrity culture. No longer are the secrets of the house kept at the expense of the women living in them. Zenique's bravery provided Tiny with the exit ramp she had perhaps been looking for but was too afraid to take. The slap was the catalyst, the timeline was the evidence, and the support of her children was the final permission Tiny needed to walk away with her head held high. As the weeks followed the incident, rumors of a final divorce filing began to circulate with more intensity than ever before. Unlike previous times when Tiny had filed and then withdrawn the paperwork, this time the energy felt different. There were no joint appearances, no united front photos, and no cryptic songs about making it work. Instead, Tiny was seen focusing on her own ventures, her own music, and most importantly, her own happiness. The secret woman that Zenique had mentioned was no longer just a shadow in the background. She became a symbol of everything Tiny was leaving behind. The public's obsession with the details of T.I.'s other life eventually gave way to a broader conversation about self-worth and the limits of forgiveness. If Tiny Harris, the woman who had stayed through everything, could finally say enough is enough, then anyone could. She became an accidental icon for women who had spent years in the ride-or-die trap, proving that death to a toxic situation is often the only way to truly start living.